Hey everyone, welcome back to part 16 of the full stack trading app tutorial. In this video, I'm going to be focusing on risk management. Now, what is risk management, right? It's just managing your risk. And so every time you buy and sell a stock, you're taking a risk on your investment or on your trade. And if you've been trading for a while, there's a chance, most likely, you've taken on too much risk at some point. So there's been times in the past where I just executed a trade and it was just too large of a percentage of my portfolio. So you're just really confident on this one particular idea. That's happened to me with Apple stock, for instance. Even though it was a great stock to be in, I put a huge percentage of my portfolio in it, which was a great idea. But the fact that I had so much money tied up into it, when something like the trade war or something happens, then the swings are a little bit more stressful. Whereas if you had taken a smaller position size, those swings are not quite as big of a deal. Or if it's stressful for every time there's an earnings report, chances are you're taking on too large of a position. So a lot of people like to talk about how easy it was to buy the FANG stocks, for instance. But if you look over the course of 10 years, you had to take really large drawdowns if you wanted to hold those stocks all the way. And if you took the right size position, chances are you would have been able to hang on longer and really realize the results of that long of an investment. So I think it's very important to control your position size. And so the reason this is coming up is because you'll notice when I showed you the opening range breakout here, didn't put much thought into it and just put in a quantity here of 100 shares, right? Regardless of what the stock was. So one stock I picked to short the other day was Amazon stock. Now 100 shares doesn't sound like that much, but when a stock like Amazon is over 300,000 or it's 3,000 over 3,000 a share, and you buy 100 shares, that's over $300,000. And in the Alpaca, just to show in the paper trading account or in the live trading account, if you have $100,000, you do have $400,000 of buying power here. And so when I went to short Amazon stock, right, sure, it'll go right through, and all of a sudden you're in a position that's over $300,000. And now if you look at, I think this was the day that I put Amazon in, right? So you'll see it broke down after 15 minutes. And then entered the short trade here. And look at that. And then the rest of the day, boom, trended all the way up, and there was no point to get out of that trade. So what happened during that time? I had probably 10 other trades queued up that triggered that were actually good trades that would have been profitable. But when they went to execute, there was an error returned from the Alpaca Trade API saying, you have insufficient funds, and those just get rejected, never made any profits, and then I'm holding my entire account in this trade that isn't even working. So we want to avoid situations like that. And so what I want to do is make sure that we enter a certain position size that's manageable for the account that we are working with. That way we don't put too much money in a single stock. The second thing I want to talk about is holding stocks overnight and whether we want to do that or not. So the strategy we had been talking about was just a simple day trade. And the idea was that we quickly get in and out of a position. So after the first 15 minutes of the day, we can enter a trade and then take a profit quickly or a loss quickly. But you'll notice what we didn't code in is what happens if it never hits our limit price, our exit price, and it doesn't hit our stop. And I ran this today with a variety of stock symbols, and you'll see I reset the account balance, and nice profit, and then nice profit still there. And then you'll notice now I'm holding overnight. I have these 5 positions still open. So we've had a lot of trades exit profitably, but I'm holding these. So this Activision short didn't work, right? And I'm still holding it. So that could gap up overnight, and I didn't want to hold this overnight, right? We want to exit at the end of the day, right? And then also this Chevron trade was working. It'd be nice to have taken that profit, for instance. The other thing you'll notice is the market closed at 1 p.m. over here where I'm at, and you'll notice I was up, at 12:30 here by, more like $500, $600, right? And so it would have been nice to just liquidate all those positions at the end of the day. But you'll see what happened is the market closed, and then after hours, there's these movements. All of a sudden, this went down, back down to break even. So we're all the way back down to break even after, having a profit that we could have locked in. So I want to talk about running a script towards the end of the day at whatever time you choose to liquidate your positions and take whatever profits or losses you have if you don't want to hold the position overnight. The third thing I want to discuss is trailing stops, and that's the reason I'm going to discuss this is because Alpaca only added this to their API probably like a month or so ago, and I haven't done a video on this, and so I thought it'd be good to discuss trailing stops, and maybe we'll incorporate that into a strategy later. And so, as you know, the idea is you can buy a stock, and then at some certain point you can say, I want to put a trailing stop in, and that way we can kind of lock in our profits on the way up. So maybe a stock breaks through a resistance level, right? And you make a trade. It keeps going for a while, and maybe you want to sell like 20 shares and then do a trailing stop and just let the rest of it run. So the way our opening range breakout strategy works right now is that we just take a profit, at a fixed level that we decide at the beginning. But maybe you want to let those, and that the problem with that, even though it's nice that you take a profit quickly, one issue with that is that you take the profits quickly, right? None of it ever. If a stock runs the entire day, and we have one of these stocks we picked like NIO, which has been a hot one, right? So I think when we were first talking about this, it was like 30, 32 here. So this guy's been running, and so sometimes it's nice to just have a trailing stop, and just as this thing busts out here, we can set a trailing stop, and that way, when there's a significant drawdown, then we take the profit then. So I want to cover how to write a simple script to execute a trade and set a trailing stop. And as always, before I get started, I'm going to thank the people that contributed via donation at the Buy Me a Coffee link, and I will thank all the anonymous donors, first of all the someones out there that didn't leave their name, but they contributed something. Thank you to all of you. Thank you once again to Jay, who is still working on the videos. Says he's been working 7 days a week, 12 to 14 hour shifts. So apparently he works 80 to 100 hours a week. You might want to take a break, Jay. So I can't imagine working 80 to 100 hours a week and then having the energy to learn how to build trading apps with Python. But that's awesome that you have that much energy, and thank you once again for continuing to contribute to the channel, not only via donations, but also via comments and feedback. So thank you very much. Thank you to Mateus here, who's following the Fast API tutorials, and I appreciate that. And I actually plan to do more on Fast API. I don't think I've fully done it justice because it actually has tons of features, and so far I'm just using it almost the same way as Flask and rendering templates and so forth. But there's a lot of other features using like async IO and WebSockets, and there's a lot of features in the framework that I would like to cover. So hoping to get to that soon. And thank you to BS, who is a data architect, and apparently BS likes working through bugs and issues and daylight savings time and all these little small issues that can bite you in the ass. So I'm glad people appreciate those details. I thought those things were kind of boring to cover, but it's good that some people appreciate the little things that you have to get right to make sure all of this stuff works. So thank you very much, BS. Thanks to Michael Streck. I know you've been following along and pointing out a lot of issues, so I am going to address all of that feedback. I'll probably do an entire whole video next to cover the Windows scheduler, which a lot of people have asked about that I haven't gotten back to, and also some of the date and time issues can continue to be issues, and I know some people have reported these on GitHub, so I want to do a follow-up that just does Windows scheduler and date and time issues and group those all together. So I'll do that. That will be the very next video after this one. Thanks again to another anonymous person who's glad I researched the latest open source tools and projects. Thanks very much. I do like to keep up and not just use Flask over and over again just because I'm comfortable with it. And I do plan to cover more open source tools, including the next thing I want to talk about at some point is Timescale DB. So one of the latest things is this these time series databases. And Timescale DB is a database built specifically for time series data. And so I want to really explore that and see what we can do with that. So since we're working with a lot of price data that is timestamped, I want to see if there's some really cool features that we can use of this and that we can leverage for a future trading app that we build. So I think it'd be cool to build another full stack trading app on top of this, especially since with this series, a lot of people have been writing SQL queries. And so Timescale DB is built on top of Postgres SQL. And so we could use a more advanced database and also use what we know about SQL and use some of these very specific time bucket features and so forth that are built into this tool. So this is the next big open source tool that I want to cover, and I think it'll be a really cool thing to talk about, and there's probably not that much material on it yet. So let's see what we can do there. And thank you to Albert Garcia, who bought 5 drinks. Thank you so much, Albert. And thank you to Crakiest. Thank you very much. And thank you to Jack Yu, who is also interested in the stock market and software development. Seems to be a lot of us out there, apparently, I guess because we're into solving problems and pattern recognition and things like that, and algorithms and so forth. Thanks to the more anonymous folks and Todd Golding for contributing. And thank you to Michael Chang and another anonymous user. So an anonymous user here is waiting for part 6 full stack trading tutorial, and I promise I'm getting there. I'm trying to just record the rest of the series and then get back to just the writing part. So I do have a lot of time off around Thanksgiving, so I'm hoping to have all of the writing done by the end of November. So stay tuned for that, and I'm going to post updates on the website. So thanks for everyone's contributions, and let's get started with coding this thing up. All right, issue number 1. Let's say you have $100,000 in your account and you have $400,000 of buying power, and you execute a trade on Amazon stock. And according to this opening range script, we're using a quantity of 100 regardless of the price. And this would cost $300 and something thousand depending on how much Amazon stock is that day. The problem with that, obviously, we only actually had $100,000, but the trade goes through and it takes up all of our buying power, and we're in a very risky situation. Not only that, if you chose a basket of stocks to trade with the same algorithm for that particular day, and Amazon happened to be the first stock to break down after 9:45 a.m., for instance, then you would use up essentially your entire account on a single stock. And even if those other stocks were profitable, those trades, when you went to enter, they would be rejected. And I had an example of this in the logs. Unfortunately, I've deleted the logs since then, but I wanted to show you the actual scenario that happened with specific examples and a specific message. Unfortunately, I don't have that right now. So the first thing we could do is just make sure no stock takes up over, let's say, 10% of our portfolio. So if we have $100,000, let's say none of our positions can be greater than $10,000 in size. And so since Amazon is $3,130 right now, let's say we'd limit it to 3 shares of stock. So how do we calculate this dynamically? This is very simple. Most people can just figure this out easily, but I'm going to show it. So the quantity is 100 here. And so what we'll do is just create a simple function that takes a price and calculates the number of shares that we want. And so rather than code this in multiple strategy scripts, let's create a new file. Let's go ahead and create a file called helpers.py. If you have a different preferred name, you can use that as well. It'll just have a simple function in here for now, and we can add other utility functions that are reusable across scripts as we need them. So I'll just create a new function, and I'll just call it get position size or get quantity, or calculate quantity. How about calculate quantity? And then it will take one input, and we'll just pass it the price of the stock, and then it will return the quantity of shares to buy. So the input will be price, and then we'll return some quantity to buy. Okay. And how do we know the quantity? Let's just define some fixed dollar amount, and let's say that number is 10,000. Right, and then we'll just divide by whatever the price is, right? So if 3,000 something came in for Amazon, we take 10,000 divided by 3,000 and get 3. But it wouldn't be even, right? So it'd be 3 point something, but we don't want to buy. We don't have any support for fractional shares or anything like that. So let's make sure it's an even number. And so what we'll do is just import the math package there. And then we'll just do math.floor to round down. And so this will go down to the nearest whole number. And so we'll just say quantity equals math.floor 10,000 divided by price. And if we do that, that should just give us 3, for instance, and then return the quantity. And I can test that real quick, right, by just running my Python interpreter here. And I can just say from helpers import calculate quantity, right? And then if I run calculate quantity and then give it the number 3,130, right, it returns the number 3. So tested that function, know it works. If I pass it 25, we get 400. So that seems to be pretty good for what we need. Very simple, right? And then all we need to do, go to our opening range breakout script, and we can just say from helpers import calculate quantity, right? And then where we have quantity equals 100, we can just do calculate quantity. And then we already had our limit price up here, which was the close of that opening range breakout candle. And so we'll just say calculate quantity for the limit price. And we're good to go. And that'll order the correct number of shares. And then we can add that to our other scripts as well and just call calculate quantity. And then the other thing you'll notice, so we've solved this, we have a reusable function, but you'll notice there is a lot of repetition in the strategy scripts we've written so far. I'm not going to address this in this tutorial because it could go on and on forever, but one thing we could do is start thinking in a more object-oriented or reusable fashion. And so we could actually, like, I've covered Backtrader in the past, and there's a strategy class, for instance, because a lot of these strategies will look, there'll be some similar code to like connect to the API, pull the bar data, and so forth. And so what we'll want to do over time in probably a whole future series, we'll build a brand new app. So I'll probably do another entire full stack app series again, and we'll try to design it in such a way that some of this code is more reusable that way. Because you can see like it starts off, everything starts off very simple and clean, but as we've added more and more scripts, you'll notice it's harder to follow along and there's more repetitive code. So I want to do a better job of refactoring this code. So we'll get to that. So yeah, that's the first thing. Position size, we're limiting it to $10,000 per trade. You could change this number. We could even create a constants.py function file that just defines like this number 10,000. That way you can change that in one place as well. I'll just leave it there. That seems fine. And we could also, even from our web browser, right, our app, we already have an app that's database driven. How I'd actually do this normally probably is have a config table that stores certain settings, or a preference table. And then the user could go in from a web form and enter, you know, their position size from the web. It would store it in the database, and then this could pull it from the database. And then that way you could dynamically adjust this like day to day. So without touching any of the Python code, we could just have a web app that's out there deployed in the cloud. I can go to my little console that's on the web and say, oh, position sizes from this day forward are 5,000, and it would be updated. The code doesn't need to change. So that's another way to do it as well. That's probably the best way to do it. Okay, position size problem, though, is solved for now. The next thing I want to talk about is the fact that we got stuck in some positions overnight, and maybe we want to liquidate all these positions at a certain time of the day. So we could write some code to liquidate our positions at the very last instant, like right before the closing bell, but there's no guarantee that those orders would get filled. So it's probably better to pick some time before the closing bell, like let's say 15 or 30 minutes before the bell. So maybe at 12:30 or 3:30, depending on where you live. Let's just liquidate all of our positions and set up a scheduled task to do that. And some people have certain rules for when to liquidate, but we're going to liquidate everything at a certain time regardless in this situation. So let's talk about this. So what I'll do is create one script called dailyclose.py, and this is just a script that runs once a day towards the close, and this will just clean up our portfolio and existing trades and anything else we want to do towards the end of the day. Maybe we want to send notifications towards the end of the day and things like that. So let's do that. So the first thing I'll do is I'll import Alpaca Trade API, Alpaca Trade API as Trade API, and I'll also import my config. right? And then I'll just copy this code from my other scripts to set up the API. And so we have an instance of Alpaca Trade API. And if I type API dot, you'll see I have the close all positions. So that's a function. So if you look at the documentation, so we'll say close all positions. And this is a function that is available. Since we're using the Alpaca Trade API library, it's just a function call, but there's an API endpoint that this corresponds to. And then it's actually a delete request, and it closes all positions. So closes or liquidates all of the accounts open, long, and short positions. Response will be provided, and each order will be attempted to be canceled. So you can either close a single symbol. So if you wanted a strategy just to close a specific symbol, you could do that, or you can liquidate all of them. So we're going to liquidate all of them. So API.close all positions, and I'll do response equals, and I'll print the response, right? And I think that's all we need. So let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. So daily close, I'll run that. Okay, and so see the response, it listed a bunch of order objects and I got a response. And now if I look in my Alpaca API account, let's see if anything happened. So you see it actually accepted all my orders, but I'm running this when the market is closed now. So I have all these orders queued up. So that did work. So it took all these 5 stocks and executed the appropriate. So depending if I was shorting the stock or going long, it's selling and buying accordingly. So it's liquidating all of my positions regardless of whether I was long or short. So that seems to be working. I just need to execute it while the market is open, right? It's not doing me a lot of good now. So to do that, let's go back to our cron tab, right? Cron tab -E, and we can just take we can make a new line here and add to our scheduler. And so we're going to add a new line, and then we're going to log our output to our trade log, and we're going to execute a daily close.py. Okay, and then at the beginning here, we don't want to run this every minute, right? We want to run this one time. And so I have the cron tab guru, our little helper here, and it tells us, let's say I want to run it at 12:30. We put 30 in the minute place, 12 in the hour place, and it's going to run every day at that time at 12:30. So the next time would be tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. Where I am at, this corresponds to where I'm at on my machine, so make adjustments accordingly. And so all I got to do is put 30 there, 12 there, and I'm going to run that Monday through Friday. So that's the 1 through 5. Right? I don't need to liquidate anything on Saturday and Sunday because the market's closed. And so there we go. We got that set up. And then now we're not stuck in our positions overnight. And now we're not stuck at huge positions that are too large for our account balance.